Welcome, I'm Deb Timstra. At this time of year, we celebrate and recognize the contributions that our men and women in uniform have made to our country and to the world. But beyond the uniform, there are many, many stories of how war has affected our lives. Today, we share the story of three proud Canadians. The first, a young girl who at the age of 2, with her family, were taken to a German concentration camp and eventually found their way to Canada. The second, the story of a young couple who fell in love in England and made a life as a military family in the Canadian Armed Forces.
I was born in Klintsy, Bryanska Oblast, which is Russia. And during the German occupation, my grandmother's house was occupied by the general. And when they were retreating in whether it was 42 or 43, I'm not 100% sure, it was in the fall, my dad was taken, and then we wound up in the camps. My parents were forced laborers, and I was one of the small children. And somehow God spared our lives, and when the army came to liberate the camp, my mother and father were spared. My older brother and sister and I, as the youngest one, we were spared, and we're in the DP camps after the liberation, and then we were accepted to come to Canada. I am so grateful to be here, and thank you to the veterans. The veterans are such special, special people, and so are their families. Their families, God bless them, God keep them, God keep our beautiful country glorious and free, as our anthem says. Oh, I'm so thankful for this country.
I started when I was about 11 years old. When I got to about 15, I was playing pretty good, but there was no real future as a professional musician, especially at that age. But the British Army was advertising for musicians. So I made inquiries. My father went with me. So he went, we met the band leader, who was a guy called Arthur Trythall, and he was also a trumpet cornet player.
I fell in love with him the first time I saw him. I didn't think that was possible. That's a fairy tale. But no, the fairy tale came true. Yeah. I really did. Yeah. And we spent that first leave that he had from Germany every day, as much as I can remember. Yeah.
In between your work?
Oh yeah, well, yeah, that was from 9 till 6 every day. Apart from that, I was with Bob, talking away and having a great old time. We got on very well.
Our father wouldn't give permission because she was too young. And I was a soldier, and the family had heard about soldiers, you know, boy, you know, like too lazy to work, so he joined the army, you know.
Well, we both wanted to get engaged as soon as we knew that he was going to be away for 3 years. That was a long time. And we went to see my dad, and Dad said, "Edda, you're much too young. You're only 16. No, see how he feels. See how you feel when he comes back." And we said, "All right, we'll do that." Well, I think it was the next day or two, and we went out and we bought an engagement ring. Well, Bobby did. And we came back, and I showed my dad the engagement ring, and he said, "I said no. No, you didn't say no to becoming engaged, just to being married." So we're engaged to be married.
We said goodbye, and I went to Egypt for 3 years. Now that was 3 years solid.
He sent a telegram to say that finally he's going to be on board this boat to come home. And I did 2 things very, very fast. I handed in my notice at work, told everyone I was going to get married, and the second one was sending out all the wedding invitations. Yeah, so, poor guy, he never had a chance really, you know. in the military, and the wife of a soldier, was pretty good actually at that time, because I had other people in the same predicament, I will almost said. But we were all together and it was like a family, so that was good. And the first house we went to was this house called Daisy Mead. And Jackie, our firstborn, was very young. And I was outside, Jackie was in her pram, and the next door neighbour said, let's have a cup of tea. I said, all right, so we're going to have this cup of tea. And all of a sudden, away in the distance, you could hear a trumpet. And it was getting closer and closer, and they're all saying, what's happening out there? I said, don't worry about it. That's my husband, he's coming home for lunch. And I said, what do you mean he's coming home for lunch? I'll show you. And this great big house we were in had a 5-bar gate. So I went out, took it off its latch and opened this big gate. Just at that, this huge carriage came round with the horses, and Bob's on the top playing the trumpet. During the wartime, I was pretty young. See, I was born 34. But I do remember, even yet, the bombs coming down, and we had a shelter in the back. Our one was on top of the ground. Most of them were underneath, but ours was on top. And we were lucky we didn't get a hit. At that time, there was 4 families to a house, and our shelter was in the backyard. And as soon as the air raid siren would go, Mum would put on our siren suits, get us in there, and there'd be a knock on the door, and this is our neighbour from upstairs with a silver tray with teapot cups. Have a cup of tea, my dears, and it'll be all right. The bombs are falling all over the place. I'll never forget that.
I was lucky in the service. Life treated me well. For the most part, we were in good places. We were treated well. But I must admit, I saw my share of misery. But one tends to forget that. You choose to forget that. And it's not until this time of year that you remember things.